It looks like war is on the way, and if they get their way, the House wants to draft and reinstitute the draft for men, and if the Senate gets their way, women get included in that draft. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity, and here is your scouting report for June 17th. Let's talk about this now. We see here Subtitle D, recruitment. This is part of the big omnibus National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. Subtitle D, recruitment, Section 531 here, automatic registration. The Military Selective Service Act is amended by striking down Section 3 and inserting the following new Section 3. Quote, except as otherwise provided in this title, every male citizen of the United States and every other male person residing in the United States between the ages of 18 and 26 shall be automatically registered under this act by the Director of the Selective Service System, end quote. Couple things to point out there. First, this is just another clear sign that we are on the path to war. One does not suddenly decide you need to do these sorts of things without some sort of impetus for that. And as I've been tracking very carefully for my subscribers back at Peak Prosperity, there's a lot of signs of war going on out there. We're seeing this now in the movement of logistics, material, men, troops, the provocations that have been going on. It's getting bad. And by the way, it's totally inappropriate to ask people to go off and die in a war that nobody can really define why it's happening in the first place or what its goals might be or what we would get out of that or why it's in the best interest of the nation, which is why I'm a huge proponent of the idea that Congress would need to declare war and that they should themselves go off and fight first, old style, Roman style, generals out front. You know how it is. If you really believe in it, then you're willing to fight for it too. This whole idea of having no consequences and sending other people's children off to die, that's weak. That is really weak behavior. But of course, I'm talking about U.S. Congress and Senate at this point, so I do repeat myself. Now, this is interesting here because Isabella Maria De Luca put this for the first time since 1972. The House passed a bill that would automatically register all males ages 18 to 26 for a military draft. We're a lot closer to World War III than you think. Okay. One more thing, then I'll get back to part two of this, what I wanted to say. Okay, now let's look at this little thing. Let me slide this over so it's a little clearer. This is the Senate Armed Services Committee, fiscal year 2025, looking at the National Defense Authorization Act. What are they looking at from their end? Well, let's find this right now. Let's just search for women. Oh, yes, look at this. What the Senate is proposing here. Amends the Military Selective Services Act to require the registration of women for selective service. So the Senate wants to draft women. Everybody who's a parent, your sons and daughters, are being put up and lined up in the crosshairs. I'm a dad of both sons and daughters. I am wholly 100% against this because these wars are completely unnecessary. And if you've been tracking the meat grinder that Ukraine is, you understand that war has always been deadly, obviously. But now it's just extra quick, extra deadly. So there's a lot of worrying signs out there right now. And not the least of them is that nobody can actually define what the problem here is or why we're heading into this particular situation. This is not at all like World War I. You read the Guns of August, you try and understand what happened. And they're like, oh, this Archduke got shot. Nah. A year earlier, a year later, you could have shot 10 Archdukes. Nothing happens. The deal was that there was plenty of dry tinder laid up. There were failed diplomacy, broken political promises, bad blood, too many loans, bankers on both sides looking to get rich from the whole thing. There was a whole lot of reasons that conspired for World War I to happen, and then a lot of people died as a consequence of that, but it didn't have to happen. It was totally unnecessary. You know, I completely believe in defending my home, absolutely, vigorously. But going out to attack somebody else in their home, not so much, not my thing. So I actually believe in having a national defense that's strong and vigorous and robust. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a national offense to go out and do things. So, for instance, let's just talk about this really quickly, because they're saying here that what they're looking for on the Senate side is $923 billion. I'm just going to laugh and choke on that a little because this is an obscene amount of money. Obscene. This is why we can't have nice things. If you ever wondered why you can't get on a high-speed train and go from A to B in the United States, or you travel any way other than, through some laboriously, horrifyingly bad airport system where they can't even manage to balance the TSA loads against the planes coming and going. Like, it's just, what a mess. This is why we can't have nice things right here. We're going to spend close to $1 trillion, and that's on the books. As we've covered with SFAS 56, they can hide a lot of stuff off the books. Don't have to tell you about it, because after all, citizen, it's not like it's your money. Oh, yeah, actually, it is. So, but still, they don't have to tell you because they wrote a law that said they didn't have to do that. That's kind of like, the CIA investigated themselves for the crack cocaine epidemic and found no wrongdoing. I'm not kidding. Just how these things happen. So this is getting bad, and nobody wants this. I don't know a single person who's in favor of any of this. I talked to a lot of people. 0 is the number of people who want any part of this. But somehow by the time you get up to the failed and defective leadership in Washington, D.C., this all begins to make sense to them somehow. But pay no attention to the fact, or maybe do, that the amount of kickbacks and lubrication and grafting that goes on around this with jobs and money, and this $923 billion, that's real cashola, folks, and that's going to get spent, and it's going to go into pockets. Full stop. That's just how the system works, obviously. It's not like magic money comes out and creates magic military hardware. That's $923 billion proposed by the U.S. Senate to go into a lot of pockets, and they just happen to know quite a few of those pockets. And that's the game. Unfortunately, this game also results, from time to time, in the death of your sons and daughters. Totally not for that. Am I an isolationist, as you would have been charged in the World War II era? Darn straight I am. If you're coming to attack my country, you have a big problem on your hands. But I really don't have no interest in going to attack you and your country, how I'm built. So that's what we're looking there. Now let's come back to this, because here's where it gets a little goofy. So they also said here, and this is the magic part here, right? And every other male person. Now, they actually have one carve out in here. If you are a diplomat's son, if you are a cook, a servant, a driver working for a diplomat or a politician or a visiting dignitary, and you happen to be male, or in the case of the Senate bill, a female, no problem, you're excluded. Non-resident aliens, they called them. But every other male. So what do we think we're talking about when we include this little language, every other male person? Obviously, we're talking about the illegal aliens who are here, the migrants who have come in, not the immigrants. We're talking migrants. Now, this is where we got to talk about this for a bit, because it's getting pretty bad. Let me see, where did I put that? Give me 1 second. So, yeah, let's talk about, not that, this. Okay, hang on 1 second. Let me start this over.
We got our hands on some brand new internal ICE data. It is jaw-dropping, and it shows just how overwhelmed the agency is right now. Before I get into it, just a little context on what it is. ICE has something called a non-detained docket. That is made up of migrants who have crossed illegally and have been released into the country with a future court date. It also includes illegal immigrants who have already been ordered deported by a judge but are still here in the country. So with that in mind, take a look at these staggering numbers right here. Federal sources telling Fox News ICE's non-detained docket has now exploded to 7.4 million cases so far in fiscal year 2024. We're told it's on track to hit 8 million by the end of this year. As you can see, these cases have more than doubled since Trump's years in office. We're told over 1 million cases have been added to this docket just since October 1st, largely due to mass catch and release here at the border. As you can imagine, ICE is buried right now. And just to put it in perspective, take a look at this second graphic right here. Sources tell us right now each ICE officer is currently managing an average of 7,000 cases each. Yes, you heard that right. 7,000 cases per ICE officer. That is obviously an impossible task given current staffing levels. ICE only has about 6,000 deportation officers nationwide right now. Not all of them work on this non-detained docket. Now,
yikes. Okay, so obviously a lot of cannon fodder sort of baked in on that. That's kind of interesting. And what else are we noticing? Of course, this is what we're going to have to talk about back at Peak Prosperity, is the actual implications of this. I've got some data, and I'm going to have to save that for the privacy of my own website and our own wall that we have there. So we'll talk about this part of this too. So look, This is obviously all coming to a head very, very quickly. There were lots of moves that happened last week. There have been provocations, things that I think should have been just shot my eyebrows up on my forehead. They've still not returned to home because of things like Ukraine shooting those over-the-horizon radar installations of Russia's that are there to detect incoming ICBMs. Who would want to blind Russia for their ability to look over the horizon to assure they're not being attacked by a surprise nuclear assault? Who is that in Ukraine's interest? I submit not. Is it in my interest? Oh, definitely not. And it's not in your interest either. So we have that going on. And then there have been the other provocations to put more additional sanctions on Russia. And people are now calling openly to sanction China and Chinese banks. Look, in the system of things that we have to worry about here, are the tensions going up or going down? That's all we need to talk about. The tensions are clearly ratcheting up with each and every week at this point in time, with more and more provocations. Clearly, somebody somewhere wants to provoke a certain kind of a reaction from Russia and or China, in which case they can then take this to the next level and respond to that provocation, which they will call unprovoked. And that's just how this game is played, and it's been played this way for a very long time. It's getting dangerous. So I need you to be aware of that. And one of the things you absolutely have to do is understand the degree to which your money, your wealth, all of that stuff is actually caught in a system at this point in time where, again, run by the same sets of raccoons that are busy doing these shenanigans. Their whole job, look, they don't care about you. They just don't. And what they want to do is they want to separate you from your wealth, from your life, from all kinds of things. They want you to own nothing. They'd like you to be happy about it. In fact, they may insist on that happiness part. But this is where we are in this particular story. So listen, please, just whatever you can do to begin to safeguard your life, your wealth, your health, all of these things, very important things to do. And it's clear that we have, I can't distinguish between these actions, some of which we just talked about, many others we didn't in this session today, and being attacked by an actual enemy. So the enemy is inside the gates. That's how I see it at this point in time. It fits with the data pretty well. And so we have to behave accordingly. Now, what do you do about that? Well, in the case of your wealth, we just held a webinar this weekend, and it was about protecting your wealth from something called the Great Taking. And we have strategies for that. It went off really, really well. I'm still tired from it because I was in the hot seat for 6 hours of a webinar. So if you haven't been on this side of the camera for 6 hours, it'll take take a little out of your hide. But with that, it's all recorded and it's going to be posted up at our site. So anybody who'd like to view that in a couple of days, it'll be there. Meanwhile, I'm going to take all this back to Peak Prosperity for my subscribers because I got some stuff I got to tell you that it has come across my personal hot phone line this weekend. So with that, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We'll be back with you next time. And please, we have to make noise about this. This is unacceptable, having our sons and daughters drafted off into a war. Nobody can really articulate how it's going to make anybody's lives better. And it certainly won't for the people who get caught up in it. All right, with that, thanks very much. See you next time.